Hello everyone, my name is Corazar, and welcome back to the Vintage Story Guide. We are back in the world after having had our world tour, and sadly it is still winter here on Lupine Ridge. We set the season to summer for the tour, and it was glorious, and we got a good preview of how our trees will grow, and our redwood was kind of sad, but hopefully when it actually grows, it'll be a nice big tall redwood that its mother can be proud of. You hear that? Grow tall. In between episodes, I have been quite busy. It's been a day or two, I think, since I last did any recording, but I have been busy with other chores that needed to get done for today's video. First, I dug up a lot of fire clay. Then I harvested grass for the pit kiln. I prepared some new materials we'll need for today's episode. Don't worry, we'll be making more in the episode. I went out to some places where I had marked black coal and started digging. I got tired of that. So anyway, I started blasting. And then I did it again and again. Then I started firing up the rest of our iron ore. We were actually out now. I made a whole bunch of iron plates and then turned them into iron doors, since the furniture traders were apparently holding out on us. Since the wind was still good, I worked the last of our still hot iron blooms into ingots. And that brings us to today's episode. Today is all about steelmaking. In fact, the next episode will be too. This is going to be part one of a two-part episode, or series, I guess, of how to make steel. Because it is quite a long process, and has a lot of parts that need to go into it, and then a lot of waiting, unfortunately. And so today, we're going to work on the functional aspect of steelmaking, and then in the next episode, we will decorate and build an actual facility, a factory, maybe even a rift, around our steel mill. The first thing you need when making steel or getting into the steelmaking process is you have to have a pulverizer. You must apparently run into your boxes. You must make one of these machines. I'll clear this out of the way so you can take a look at it better. Because you have to have, at minimum, some crushed bauxite and some crushed quartz. And you can achieve this or acquire this by just dropping them in your chest there, having them piped into your pulverizer, and then having them funneled into an output chest. Now, because this is a kind of long process, I went ahead and pulverized a whole bunch of bauxite and quartz right in here. So we have a ton of this stuff. And what you'll do with this is you take fire clay and quartz and bauxite, and you can make some tier 1 refractory bricks. These are the bricks you have to use in order to make your first cementation furnace. Now, because we're fancy and we've already found olivine, I went ahead and crushed up all of our remaining olivine as well. And with this, we can turn this into tier 2 refractory bricks. And the reason we want to do that is because if you use tier 1 refractory bricks, each block of bricks has a 90% chance to survive the firing process, meaning you will lose about 10%, or I think something like 5.5 average blocks from your cementation furnace. With olivine, however, that rises to a 95% survival chance for each block of bricks in your build, and roughly 2 to 2.5 blocks typically break per firing. There is a third tier of refractory bricks that involves ilmenite, crushed ilmenite, which is the titanium ore you'll find in the game, but we don't have any of that, and even if we did, we have to have steel in order to process it, because we have to have steel pounder caps on our pulverizer. So, at best, for your first firing of steel, you will have to use tier 2 bricks. Unless you can't find any olivine, in which case you'll be using tier 1s. It isn't the end of the world, but you will go through a little bit more resources making steel. Each brick requires not 1 fire clay, but 2. And it is a formless crafting recipe. You can actually just stack them all together if you want to. And so if we do this, we will make half a stack of refractory bricks. Let's finish the stack out, shall we? Much better. In fact, I'm going to make 3 stacks, and we'll go fire them now. And by right now, I mean in the morning, because it was a very riftful and drifterful night, so I stayed inside. So we're just going to load these up, And then we do our grass. And our sticks. And our peat. And then, of course, we heat them up. I think it's been quite a while since we actually went through a full firing process on camera. Anyway, then, of course, as usual, you wait. But Kurazar, you clever seraph, you wouldn't make us sit through that firing of all those bricks and then make us wait so long? Well, you are correct. You are correct. You are smarter than I am because I could not fool you. And you are right, I actually pre-fired all of these, and I totally didn't show it to you in the intro to the video or anything, did I? Of course not. I wouldn't do that. So, we have our refractory bricks. What else do we need? Well, we need some iron doors, and I made those, as well as this one that we bought 1,000 years ago. And I have 3 iron doors. And then we need mortar. Additionally, we're going to need a few blocks of either andesite or granite. And in the next version of the game, 1.17, I think we'll be able to use basalt and that green rock. That one right here. That one. I can't pronounce that. It's weird. We're going to go ahead and just use some granite. I'm just going to grab a stack here. And in order to complete this, we will need some borax. Where do I keep my borax? Borax, there you are, my friend. And a chisel. Not that one. There we go. And a hammer. And what we need to do with these is we need to make a coffin. A stone coffin. And we can look this up by doing this, and here we go. For each cementation furnace you're going to build, you will need 2 of these stone coffin sections. So we're going to go ahead and make 2 of those. And then you need 2 of these stone coffin lids. And I'm not sure if they have to be of the same material. I haven't tried it, so experiment at your own risk. However, as you can see, we have 3 iron doors, and no furnace needs 3 doors. Well, that's because we're going to not make just 1 furnace, and not 2, but we're going to make 3 furnaces. There we go. So we now have 6 stone coffin sections, 6 coffin lids, and each of these lids will correspond and cover one of these sections. Now I need to make some of the brick pieces that we're going to need for our furnace. For each furnace, we need 6 of these grate pieces. And they are made, I thought they were made like this. I guess I'm wrong. Oh, there we go. So for each of these, we need 6 of these. So this is 1 furnace, 2 furnaces. They don't stack very high. And 3 furnaces. Additionally, we're going to need 53 refractory brick blocks per cementation furnace. And to make those, we just pile all of our bricks in here. I'm beginning to realize that we don't have enough for this demonstration at the moment, so I guess we are going to be waiting for those bricks to finish firing, aren't we? Nevertheless, we can certainly get started on the first of our furnaces and worry about the rest of them in a bit, when all the bricks are finished firing. The next stage is picking a location for your furnace. And this can be important depending on how you want to fit the furnaces into your build, and if you're going to have more than 1 furnace, also a consideration. But each furnace is a roughly 5x5x5 multi-block structure in Vintage Story. And because of that, they're kind of, hoggish. They take up a lot of room. And we're doing 3 of them, so we need a 5x5 by at least 15 area. But I would like some walking space between them so that we can inspect our furnaces after each firing and be able to replace the blocks more easily as they break. Personally, I want to sort of turn this into a bit of a factory, so there's also a consideration for me in this build here. The factory is going to be a larger structure that fits around these, so it's going to be pretty hefty. Now, with this build, since we're making a factory out of this, we're going to want to put this a little bit farther away from the house, because, factories spew pollution out, and sure, we have our forge over there, but we only burn coal in there occasionally. these furnaces will be burning for, I think, like 5 days straight. So we want to make sure that we're not going to be breathing in all those fumes. And maybe we can pipe them down here and choke all the drifters. So I'm thinking that I'm going to put this build out here somewhere. And I'm thinking this might be the perfect spot. Maybe even a little farther back, because I want to have sort of a warehouse factory where you walk in and there's kind of some floor space in the beginning, and then we have the furnaces start. But in addition, I also want to set the factory back from the road. I feel like, you know, even though pollution really isn't a thing, and we're sort of going with the industrial era, you know, building standards of let's put our pollution spewing builds right next to our homes, I do think it would be prudent of us to maybe hide our build behind some trees. So it might be nice to have like a bit of a yard out in front of our furnaces and out in front of the factory. So I'm thinking if we start, say, from here, so we'll bring our road out a little farther here, as we're going to anyway, and we'll have the road break off in this direction to go to our factory. And that means if we're going to have a yard with maybe some trees, then I think, frankly, our factory should start probably kind of in the middle of this hole. I guess I'll be patching this up, and then we'll have a bit of floor space here for some storage and some other odds and ends, and maybe a couple other machines or forging related objects, or maybe even chisel work. And then we'll come out maybe to, say, here. And here's where we'll start our first furnace. Now, this landscape is a bit bumpy, and I don't want to have to deal with the sounds of drifters howling up at us while we're working here. So I'm going to take some time now, and I'm going to go ahead and flatten this landscape out, or at least enough to house our build. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to just lay some stones out and other methods of preventing drifter spawns. And then I'll bring you all back when we're ready to break ground on our furnaces. Welcome back, everyone. It has been a few days in-game, if you look at the date indicator in the upper left-hand corner. So I realized that I was very short on olivine and bricks in general, so I took a few in-game days to rectify that. I went down south to the olivine deposits that used to be here and here. These two were actually pretty darn small, and so I cleared them out and got maybe 3 stacks of olivine, which is enough for 1 firing of bricks. And then I came out to... here it is. This one here, and this is a significantly larger deposit of olivine, so I was able to get enough to complete the job, I hope. So I have here our project chest. We have 1 more firing of bricks going on over in the kiln right now. And when those are done, we will have all the bricks we need to build our cementation furnaces, and then some. We'll have enough for some repairs too. In the meantime, let's go ahead and start just laying out how this place is going to fit into the land here. So we have the area here is pretty well flattened out. I think, mined out a whole bunch of gravel from here, the limestone gravel that we use for lining the roads, and so it gave this terrain a really weird, ugly, divotty, ditchy kind of look to it. I want to use this packed dirt to just get an idea of how big this place needs to be. And I think that I want to set our cementation furnaces a little bit farther back from the main entrance, although maybe I could offset the main entrance instead, because I don't want the build to be too huge. I don't want it to be, you know, as large as the house or even as large as the forge. I kind of want this to be a somewhat more compact build. And so here's how we'll lay out our furnaces. 2, 3, 4, 5, there we go. So each of these squares represents 1 furnace. Well, each of these 5 by 5 squares is 1 furnace. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty chunky build, kind of no matter how we slice it. So I do want to maybe, yes, we'll try to keep this a bit narrower. You know what? Nope. This build's going to be huge, so I'm going to rejigger this. Let's instead make this a 3 block wide doorway. That way we can center one of our furnaces on this doorway, and we'll have them facing the doorway instead. There we go, and then let's just build this around it. And we'll have sort of maybe a little extra space over in these corners here instead for any additional machinery or details we want. Okay, this is far more manageable. Absolutely. Let's do it. So we're going to build these from the ground up, and that means we need to consider where we're going to put the fuel, because the fuel must be inserted in the 2 blocks directly below the coffins. And to do that, I want to be able to walk along this floor here and peer into the fuel areas, and then, you know, add fuel as needed. And so I'm going to raise the whole build up by about 1 block so that we can do that. Because the fuel will be going in this slot and this slot. And you'll see when the actual build is complete here why that is. But basically we'll have the door here, 1 block higher, so it'll be basically here's the doorway. The coffin will be resting actually 1 block up on top of that. So we're going to go ahead and just fill this in with these stone bricks. And I guess it's a good thing we have 1,000,000 of these, because I'm going to blow through this pretty quick. I might even just take this front bit out and maybe put some other kind of bracing here along the front. Or maybe even just do this. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually put a slab down right here. And the reason for that is that you have to keep your coal piles from scattering, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to have a whole bunch of coal in piles, and you can place coal on the ground by crouching and right-clicking, and you get a pile of your coal type, whether it's black, anthracite, and so on. And by continuing to right-click, you can add more to the pile. But at some point, there we go, it slid off. It becomes unstable, and it will still occasionally let you raise them if it doesn't randomly choose to slide off. But basically, if we don't keep our coal pile from sliding toward us out of the fuel area, then it's just going to spread around, and we don't want that. Now, it might seem really nice to use the coke oven door to keep your fuel inside. The problem with that is that if you are firing and you're using black coal to fire, that's going to turn half of your stack of black coal into cokes, and they just make managing the firing a bit more unwieldy, and that's just something you don't need while you're doing this kind of thing. So there we go. And that's why I'm going to be using a slab. And I might actually put a second slab here so I can stand up here and crouch. Actually, I could instead put my slab here and crouch there. Yeah, we'll just do that. That's going to be easier. And really, you just need anything here. You could have a chiseled block with 1 little pixel left right here, and that would suffice, because the coal just can't spread through it. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these bases in, and then we'll talk about how to build the actual structure. Okay, we have them all in, and I realized as I was building these that I'm being a bit silly, because I keep talking about it. Why don't we just go ahead and do what I suggested doing, which is to chisel out a good chunk of these blocks here. And the reason is that vertical reach here is more important than horizontal, so I don't need to worry about these blocks sort of cramping my ability to reach the back of the fuel area here, but it is important to be able to hit that back wall with the fuel, because it's kind of hard to target the floor, especially if you have a pile here in front of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Maybe even, can I make this a little fancier? Just a little bit. Oops. Yeah, we'll do that. There we go. All done. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our refractory bricks, and let's get cracking on building the furnaces. So we will start with 1 of these, and then I will build the rest of them and bring you back when they're done. And I'm going to start by putting down a 5x5 layer of these bricks here first. like so, and across the front here like this. Now we want to leave these open, because right here is where our gratings are going. We're going to put them right here, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and take our coffin and fit it like that, and like that. And it will always sort of face the direction that you are looking, as in the opening will be toward you. And then what we can do is, with an empty hand, we can right-click, shift right-click, and it will give you this sort of ghost, this guide for how to build the rest of the furnace. And you can actually start with just the coffin if you don't want to put down the floor first. You can start with the coffin and then sort of build the floor afterward. And at this point, it's just the bricks and the door. So let's get to it. Whoops, I forgot that these corners are not actually needed. Okay, and what I did there was I actually did another crouch and right click, and that sort of had it do a check on the phantom help, and since it found nothing missing, it is removed, and we're ready to fire. Or soon. I'm going to go ahead and get these three in because I want to do an experiment with the different fuel types that we have. We have charcoal, black coal, and anthracite, and I wanted to fire each of them with one type of fuel. And then record how many firings it takes, because each kind of fuel has a different burn time. And we can find out how many pieces of fuel it takes, how long it takes, and how many firings it takes. And while you actually can refuel the furnaces while they are firing, I want to let them burn out and then start again, just to sort of get a nice gauge for how long it takes and how many firings and so on. So I'm going to get these others in, and then we will come back and deal with these stone coffin lids. Okay, it is now morning and all of our cementation furnaces are installed. And I might come in here with a little bit of like bolstering under this front block here, and maybe sort of smooth some of this out. But we cannot chisel any of these blocks, so this is kind of similar to the greenhouses in that it's kind of hard to gussy these up. You can't cover them up, because if you do, you might not be able to see that the blocks are broken from the outside. And you can't chisel them because then they don't work. So our next step is to go and get what we're going to actually turn into steel. Let's go do that. Now, the first thing to understand is that this is not a fast process. It is not an efficient process. We can do up to 16 ingots of iron into 16 ingots of steel per furnace. And this will take 5 days. So we have our iron, and then we also need a ton of charcoal. And I'm just going to grab a whole bunch out of here. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab some anthracite and some black coal. And now that we're back over at our furnaces, we're going to climb into our first one. And we need to take our charcoal, and we need to first start by crouching and right-clicking into the coffin. We can go ahead and then put crouch and place 4 ingots of iron, 1 more layer of charcoal, and it uses 8 charcoal each time, 4 more ingots, another layer, 4 more ingots, another layer, 4 more ingots, and our last layer. So we have now invested 40 charcoal in this coffin, and we will get most of it back. We will lose 8 pieces of charcoal to the process, sort of representing the fact that the carbon goes into the iron to make it steel. And I imagine some of it burns off too. That's just a guess. And then we can go ahead and place our lids by crouching and right-clicking. And if all is done right, then you will see in the tooltip, it'll say ready to be fired, ignite a pile of coal below each stone coffin half. So we will do that in a moment after we load up all the others. Okay, so all these are loaded. They're all reporting that they're ready to be fired. let's go and I guess we'll get our fuel. And we'll sneak back here. And we're just going to load up. There we go. And you want to sort of aim at the back wall first to sort of try to get that rear pile all filled up. And if you don't, it might make sense to come in here and make a second sort of fueling window in the back here, if you're having trouble with that. But each firing will take 32 units of your fuel. Well, each instance of firing, at least. Whether or not it finishes in one firing is a different story. And then that was black coal, so anthracite. Oh, it looks different too. Neat. There we go. Now, the last thing to do is light them. Start with charcoal. There we go. And it will take a second, we can't see it from here, but it will take a second to ignite the rear pile. And I know that is the cause of some efficiency loss. It's really minor. All three are firing, and we can go and check inside here, but you want to be careful. You can open the door and look in, and if you see this sort of fire and smoke coming up here, that means it's working. But you don't want to go inside because it hurts a lot. So don't walk in there, or I mean, you can. It won't kill you immediately, but it does hurt. And that begins what's called the carburization process. That is where the iron accepts carbon into it by virtue, I guess, of heating up and agitating all the atoms. Of course, this is a vintage story. Do we even have atoms here? What even are we? Anyway, this process is going to go for, like I said, about 5 days. And you'll also be able to see that there is smoke rising from the chimneys. And I think it actually gets thicker over time, I want to say. I'm not positive on that, but I want to say it gets thicker. And it's a very good indicator from far away of whether or not your furnaces are still going. Now, there are a couple things I want to cover before we end the episode. One is that this episode was all about the building and firing of these, and the next episode will be about building the building around them, as well as finally getting our grubby little paws on some real steel. And one of the things that I wanted to cover is that we don't have to use charcoal in here. We can use what are called coal cokes, and those are made by burning either brown or black coal in an oven, and you sort of convert some of them into coal cokes. I find that far less efficient than chopping down renewable trees and converting them into charcoal in a charcoal pit. Because coal cokes, you only get, I think, half as many cokes as you put in fuel. So there is that. The second thing I want to do is, I guess I will do signs there. Yeah, we'll do there, there, and there. And we're going to note that here we did charcoal. We're going to do firings on our first one. And fuel. So far we've used 32. And that's going to be true for all of these at the moment. And there we go. We're going to go ahead and track just how much fuel and how many firings it takes to actually convert this into steel. Anyway, everyone, that is about all we have time for in this episode of the Vintage Story Guide. I hope you enjoyed our little adventure in getting these cementation furnaces going and starting the process of steelmaking. And I hope it was educational too. In the next episode, we will be building our foundry around these furnaces, and then we will be getting our hands on some steel for real. If you have any questions you'd like to have answered AMA style, you can leave them in the comments with the hashtag 20questions. And if you play computer games and you'd like to support the channel, consider using my partner link next time you're shopping at the Humble Store, on screen now and in the description below. Anyway, as always, my name has been Corazar. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.